Just trying to angle my head properly because I always seem to have a slight slant in these videos. I'm not sure why. Anyway, straight to the point. This is about the issue of feminism, a subject that I've spoken quite a lot about in quite a large number of my videos. The reason I do make a lot of videos on the subject is because simply I cannot cover all the issues I want to in one video, right? They're about a 15-minute bandwidth. It's simply not possible to cover all the issues I would like. I've entitled this video From Women's Rights to Feminist Wrongs, and I'd like to explain why. Firstly, I want anyone watching this to be under no illusions. I am a passionate supporter of women's rights. A passionate supporter, right? I can see pretty much every day there is issues around the world that deeply impact women. Whether it be stoning issues, which is something I'm going to make a video about, or female genital mutilation, or the very heinous crime of rape, which far too often goes unpunished and far too often the victim gets blamed, to numerous other issues. I see this every day, and I am a staunch supporter of women's rights as 50% of human rights. And it is unquestionable that in many parts of the world women get a raw deal. In many parts of the world women are second-hand citizens, and in many parts of the world basic human rights are denied. To give an example, drivers in Saudi Arabia, women drivers, that's just an example. So the push for women's rights is still very, very valid in a worldwide context. It's very valid. And of course there is also men's rights issues around the world. I've made videos on that, so I don't really need to mention it here. One of my last videos was about the Fathers for Justice campaigner Tim Harris. My British viewers will be aware of that. So I also believe strongly in men's rights. I am a staunch supporter of human rights. But I'm just trying to clarify that because I've made a lot of videos critical of feminism does absolutely not mean I'm against women's rights. And this is something I believe is very important to discuss. There is this sort of reactionary tendency for feminists, or for people who believe in feminism, to assume that if you are critical of feminism, or any aspect of feminism for that matter, you are against women's rights. I strongly and actually bitterly resent this implication. Actually, I'm not against feminism, and I've explained this in another video, because feminism is too broad-ranging. In parts of the world I think feminism is very valid. I'm talking about the Western context, and I believe Western feminism, which probably itself can be subdivided, but broadly speaking Western feminism has lost a lot of its legitimacy in the last sort of decade. It started off with very worthy origins with the suffragettes and the basic push for women's equality. And the situation today is not perfect. We shouldn't pretend that it is. There are some issues that do unfairly impact women. For example, far too many women who are victims of rape don't get the justice they deserve. That continues to be a problem in my country, in the UK. It is true that there are examples of men getting falsely accused. That's a big problem as well. But let's not exaggerate and say that false accusations are apparent in every case. Rape does happen, and those of us who do believe in men's rights have to acknowledge that it is a real crime. This isn't just something feminists have invented. Rape is a real crime, and women who suffer that heinous crime deserve justice. And I would like to see more men's rights activists acknowledge that it is a real crime. And it's one reason why I don't fully endorse the men's rights movement, because I believe that they're guilty of doing exactly what feminists do, which is distorting some problems that are out there. That's why I don't fully endorse the men's rights movement. I endorse parts of it, such as the Fathers justice movement and so on, but I don't fully endorse a men's rights movement on the same grounds that I believe it's guilty of the same sort of hypocrisies and distortion as feminism is. I staunchly believe that in this decade, in the 2010s, what we need to look at in the Western world, in democratic countries, largely democratic, is a united front, people against sexism, in all its ugly forms. I'm speaking as a man, right? I love women, and I hate to see women suffer. Not just because as a heterosexual man I'm attracted to women, but as fellow human beings. I don't like to see men suffer either. The point I'm trying to make is I am absolutely objective when it comes to human rights in terms of gender. Okay? I care about human rights in general. Now, I've entitled this video From Women's Rights to Feminist Wrongs, and I want to point out why I believe that Western feminism and women's rights are not one and the same. I believe that Western feminism, whilst, like I said, started off with worthy origins, virtually every feminist campaign I see, Western feminist campaign, is about wallowing in victimhood and talking about how terrible the patriarchy is and how terrible men are. It is unquestionable that Western feminism has a very misandric undertones. That's undeniable. And I think any feminist who says that that doesn't exist is either kidding herself or himself by denying that that exists. Because it does. And they always make out that it's a very small minority who give the whole movement a bad image. I dispute that. Now, I've said in another video it's unfair to call all feminists man-haters, and I stand by that. Of course not all feminists are man-haters. I've personally known plenty of feminists who are civil to myself, who clearly don't hate men, and who it's unfair to call them man-haters. Nevertheless, they do endorse a movement that in many ways is guilty of endemic institutional misandry, promoting negativity and hatred against men. This is indisputable. I've argued that far too often moderate feminists do not do anywhere near enough to condemn the extremists within their movement. Now, where was the feminist outcry when those University of Toronto hardcore feminists shut down the men's rights debate? Where is the feminist outcry whenever you hear feminists coming out with outrageous sexist statements that would not be tolerated if it was a man saying it about women? The simple reality is feminists don't speak out on these issues. They don't condemn misandry whenever it occurs. They just don't. I mean, you see this sort of double standards all the time in the media. If a man makes a misogynist or sexist statement against women, and let's say he's a public figure, whether he be a politician or a news anchor or some sort of DJ or sports presenter, he will almost certainly lose his job or definitely be under massive pressure to resign. Okay? And that might be justified because there is no place for sexism in the media. But I guarantee you, if a woman celebrity or politician or high profile figure were to say something similar, there's absolutely no way that she would face the same level of scrutiny. Now clearly, this is not right. Clearly, this is hypocrisy. And clearly, the feminist movement has done nothing to address these double standards. And I can quote many examples of blatant double standards. For example, the show Loose Women. There's constant sexism in that show against men. Yet it continues to be aired and it's not censored. And I mention censorship because I do believe that this is another problem I have with Western feminism. It shackles democracy actually, because as a movement it is actually very powerful and very influential, and it has the power to censor and shut up anyone that it deems to be not worthy of fitting into their sort of agenda. So if the feminist movement perceives you to be not worthy of their sort of objectives and their sort of opinions, they will shut you up. They will censor you. I mean, try putting a comment on a feminist group on Facebook. Good luck, because you will be shut up and you will be censored. Even if your comment is not inflammatory, it's just a basic question. I know because I've tried it. It's an incredibly intolerant movement. Incredibly. Not just against men, incidentally. There's a large number of women turning against feminism because they're seeing, and just look online, the number of videos by women speaking out against feminism. I think it's because many women resent the fact that feminists take this arrogant view, or maybe more precisely the movement has sort of taken this arrogant view that it can dictate to other women what they should and shouldn't do, and what they should and shouldn't believe in. Feminism has demonized feminine women. Feminism has demonized women who don't want to be powerful businesswomen, and it's branded them subservient little girls who do what men want. Feminism insults free choice, because whenever a woman makes free choice, and I've mentioned this in my argument about the so-called objectification issue, whenever women make free choice, feminists always turn it into a case of, oh, poor women being objectified or sort of put on this, being controlled by sexist, sleazy men. They always turn it into that, and they never look at this personal choice issue. So I find modern Western feminism incredibly intolerant, incredibly arrogant, and frankly, it has totalitarian undertones. Now, by totalitarian, I'm not talking about dictatorial necessarily. I'm not talking about Hitler, Stalin, Mao totalitarian, but it's totalitarian in terms of how intolerant it is, and how you cannot say anything to a feminist without being vilified as a misogynist. Just try getting into a debate with a lot of feminists. They will simply resort to petty insults, especially if you're a man. They will say things like, oh, you have a small penis, you hate women. That's a common one, which I just find, actually, the definition of misogyny is hatred of women. There's a lot of men who are critical of feminism. There's very few men that actually hate women. It's just a stupid argument to make. It's totally invalid. There are some men who hate women, but they're a very small minority. So what I'm saying is that the principles of feminism, the original principles, are valid. There are areas where women don't have equal rights. And incidentally, I have no problem with women standing up for women's issues. But I do have a problem with the fact that feminism constantly promotes anti-male negativity. They constantly blame men for decisions that women make. Constantly. And I'll give one example. Yasmin Alibhai-Brown, who's a feminist writer in the UK, feminist columnist, she actually tried blaming men for women's high heels, right? The fact that women choose to wear high heels, that's men's fault, right? Because apparently it's so that us men can drool at the sight of elegant women. This is insulting to both men and women. It's insulting to men because it's insinuating that we are forcing women to do it, which we aren't. And by the way, any employer that would force a woman to do that would clearly go out of business, because gender discrimination laws would not allow that. And it's insulting to women because, again, it's dictating to women what they should and shouldn't wear. I know lots of women who would go through that pain because they want to look elegant. And they know it's painful, but they're adult women, they're adult free-thinking women who choose to do it. You know, I may, as an amateur boxer, I may go through the pain of training sessions, but I know there's a goal at the end. The goal is to be a good fighter. In the same way, women who choose to wear high heels, they know it's painful, but they also know it looks elegant, right? So, I'm getting to the end of the bandwidth, but I just think that feminism, Western feminism, has lost a lot of its legitimacy by focusing so much on promoting anti-male negativity and really going away from egalitarian principles. This is much more a divisive movement than it is an egalitarian movement. And anyone can see that. You know? It's so obvious.